Today's subject is horses. In Shakespeare's Richard III, in the very last act, Richard has just come a cropper and he's out there on the battlefield and he cries out, a horse, my kingdom for a horse." And all I want to say about that is there is nothing that I would give for a horse. I wouldn't give my kingdom. I wouldn't give anything I own for a horse. I wouldn't give a plugged nickel for a horse. Horses and I have a, shall we say, regrettable relationship down through the years. I'm going to illustrate this by telling you two stories today. Let's go back to when I was 4 years old and I was living with my family in Vallejo, California. And we used to have delivered to our front door periodically dairy products and eggs from a local farm. And the guy who delivered these things to our house, he and his wife were childless, and he took a shine to me. He rather thought I was, I suppose, a cute little fellow, and so he and his wife invited me out to their farm one time, and my parents agreed that, okay, this could happen. So I was rather excited because I was going to be able to see all sorts of animals that I had never seen before in my life, and I went with them, and most of the details I've long since forgotten. But what I do remember is this. I got up, I think, the first morning, and I went outside, and over in the distance I saw a horse. And I'd never seen a horse up close and personal before in my life. And so I walked over to the horse, approached him from behind, and the horse kicked me right in the stomach. And I think I was more startled. I think I had my feelings hurt more than my body. And I began wandering down country road. I was heading back home to Vallejo. I had no idea where Vallejo was, but that's where I was going because this horse had hurt me so much. They found me, sometime later, walking down the road, tears pouring down my face. I don't remember if I stayed any longer than that. I know for sure I never got on board a horse on that particular visit. You couldn't have gotten me anywhere near a horse. Well, now, let's flash forward exactly 20 years. That happened when I was 4 years old. Well, this next story, I was 24 years old. I was in my first year of teaching, and I must have been perceived by some of my students as being a bit of an orphan, a bit forlorn, this American guy up in Nova Scotia for the first time, and didn't have a wife and didn't have a home and all of that. So I was invited out to people's houses sometimes for dinner. And one of my students, Beth, invited me, or her family invited me over to their place for a Saturday dinner. And Beth asked me, "Mr. Fetty, do you know how to ride a horse?" And I said, "Well, no, I've never been on a horse before in my life." And she said, "We have horses and we're going to go out horseback riding." So I thought, yeah, okay, that's fine. And so on this particular day, we went out to the barn, and there were a number of horses there. And Beth said, "I'm going to give you," I forget what the horse's name was, but it was a mare. And she said that this was the gentlest, nicest horse they had. So this would be a good one for a novice like me to get some experience on. So I mounted the horse. Pretty proud of myself. Even had a picture taken of me on board the horse. I must have been thinking, Steinbeck, Hemingway, Jack London, I've got you all beat. I'm going to be learning how to ride a horse. And so we went out across the pasture, and I remember that we were galloping along at a pretty good clip, and I felt after a little while that I wasn't so much in control of the horse as the horse was in control of me. And I knew that for a fact when we got out of the pasture and we were heading down a lane in the orchard that was on the farm. And the horse was going way too fast for my liking. And down at the end of the orchard, there was an apple tree with a branch hanging right across about head high. And I thought, oh my God, I am going to get decapitated. This horse was running straight for that branch. And just before we got to it, the horse did a 45-degree angle, just about sent me head over heels out of the saddle, but I managed to hold on and went down another lane. And finally, after a while, the horse was reined in, came to a stop. Well, that was an experience. My heart was really beating. We did a little bit more cantering around, and eventually we went back to the barn. And I dismounted, Beth dismounted, and while I was standing there, I got this whack across my butt. And I thought, that's kind of a forward sort of thing for a female student to do to her teacher, slapping him across the backside like that. And I turned around and Beth was doubled over laughing. And I asked, what is so funny? And she said, the horse kicked you in the butt. Well, that was humiliating enough. I think even more humiliating than that, more physically hurtful than that, was the next morning when I tried to get out of bed. I was in so much pain, I literally could not sit up. I had to roll out of bed. I had heard of saddle sores before. I thought saddle sore was just kind of a little figurative expression. I discovered that saddle sores were all about open wounds, of which I had a number on my body. I probably hobbled around for days after that, just from the pain of that horse riding experience. For all that, I still didn't suffer the humiliation of being thrown from a horse. A friend of mine, Heather, she's was and still is a very good equestrian, and she's owned a number of horses over the years. And she was telling me one time that she had her horse in the paddock. She was just giving it a little bit of exercise. It had been raining recently, and she said there were some puddles in the yard of the paddock. And she said that horses can't see very well, and they'll sometimes shy at something that they don't recognize. And the horse shied at one of these puddles, and because she wasn't attentive, she was shot right out of the saddle, flew across the paddock, and smashed her face right into the fence. She had a face that was like a porcelain doll. And she said, with horses, you can never, ever be totally safe. You never know when something like that might happen. In any case, all I can say is I don't have too much use for horses. The only horses that I might approach nowadays would be maybe the horses on a merry-go-round, and even then I think I would approach them warily from the front.